His voice cracked through the dining hall like a gunshot. "You embarrass me! I'm disgusted by you!" Every fork froze in midair. Glasses halted just inches from lips. My granddaughter Emily's eyes widened as if they might spill out of her face. The joy and pride of her graduation dinner curdled into raw public shame. And yet, I smiled. Not a trembling, weak smile. A calm, deliberate one. Because I had been waiting for this exact moment. With the kind of elegance that only comes after living 8 decades on this earth, I gently placed my linen napkin on the table, lifted one finger in the air and waved to the waiter. He nodded. The television on the far end of the restaurant blinked, and then the video started playing. But before I tell you what was on that screen, let me tell you how we got here. My name is Margaret Rose Lancaster, and I'm 84 years old, a retired second-grade teacher, proud grandmother of 3, and widow of a kind-hearted farmer named James. I live in a white cottage at the edge of Asheville. Quiet, creaky floors. A rose garden that blooms even when I forget to water it. I never liked drama. I never raised my voice. But something about Derek, my daughter's husband, always rubbed me wrong. From the moment he walked into my daughter Olivia's life, he reeked of something I couldn't name at the time. But now I know. Entitlement, arrogance, control. He was charming at first, those fake white teeth and a laugh just a little too loud. My daughter, poor thing, was swept away. Olivia always thought she needed to marry up. And Derek made 6 figures. He wore tailored suits and told people he worked in digital capital operations, whatever that means. I tried. God knows I tried to get along with him. I let it go when he joked about me being from the dinosaur generation. I stayed silent when he rolled his eyes during prayer. I bit my tongue when he told my granddaughter not to hug me too tightly because old people break. But then he started doing something worse. He started treating Olivia, my daughter, like she was disposable. Subtle at first. "Honey, that dress is a little tight. Let me handle the finances, babe. You don't need to go back to school, you've got a family now." Then came the lies, the nights away, the coldness. And still, Olivia stayed. I wanted to shake her, scream, "This is not love. This is not what I taught you to accept." But I knew my daughter. The more I pushed, the deeper she'd bury herself in the mess. So I waited. I watched. I kept records. I paid attention. I wrote in my little blue notebook every time something didn't sit right. I took pictures. I recorded conversations, ones he didn't know I heard. And when Emily, my sweet, brilliant Emily, invited me to her graduation dinner, I knew this would be the day. The restaurant was called Olive Pine, fancy place, cloth napkins, water in wine glasses, everyone whispering as if laughter were a crime. I wore my favourite ivory blouse and brushed my long blonde hair back into a loose bun. My bones ached from the rain earlier that day, but I smiled through the pain. Emily sat beside me in her cap and gown, glowing with pride. Olivia looked beautiful too, even if her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. And Derek, well, Derek showed up late as usual, wearing a smug grin and too much cologne. The appetizers came. Laughter floated. I let him talk. I let him gloat about his latest investment in blockchain and how he might buy a second Tesla. Then came dessert, and Derek stood up. He raised his champagne glass, not to Emily but to himself. "I just want to say," he began, "being the father figure in this young woman's life has been a trial." People chuckled politely. He went on, "You know, not everyone is built for greatness. Some people live in the past, like my mother-in-law here." I smiled, sipping my water. Still stuck in the old ways, clings to Emily like she raised her or something. I felt Emily's hand grip mine tighter. "And honestly, Margaret, you embarrass me." The air stilled. "I mean it," he snapped. "I'm disgusted by you. You've always been a bitter, nosy old woman who doesn't know when to stay out of people's lives. And tonight, you've ruined the energy of this beautiful dinner with your judgmental glare and your presence. A hush. Olivia looked like she'd been slapped. Emily's lower lip trembled. Me? I folded my napkin. I smiled. And I waved. The waiter nodded, walked over to the television, and hit play. It started with a voice. His voice. Derek's. Yeah, she bought the whole thing. She thinks I'm in New York for business. Please, I'm in Cancun with Trish. The video continued. Clips of Derek lying, manipulating, mocking Olivia. Then came the hotel footage. Him kissing a woman half his age at a pool bar. Another clip. Him bragging about how he married Olivia just for her family's inheritance. People gasped. Forks dropped. Emily covered her mouth. Olivia sat frozen, tears pooling in her eyes. Derek stammered, turning pale. Where did you get that? I stared at him, calm. Your Ring camera, Derek? You know, the one you forgot I installed when you were away? He blinked, no words. And the voice recordings? I continued. Well, that little Google device you love so much, it's always listening. The restaurant was silent, except for the last clip playing. She'll never leave me. She's too weak. Her mum. That hag won't do anything either. She's just a useless relic. And then the screen went black. Everyone was watching us now. Derek looked like he wanted to sink into the carpet. But I didn't stand up. I didn't yell. I leaned across the table, looked into his eyes and said softly, I've been patient long enough. But just as I opened my mouth to say more, Derek did something no one expected. He lunged across the table, grabbing the remote, knocking over Emily's water glass and screaming at the top of his lungs. And that's when the manager came running. The restaurant manager, a tall man with thinning grey hair and a red vest, rushed over with wide eyes. Sir, I need you to calm down. But Derek wasn't hearing anyone. He was foaming at the mouth, figuratively, of course, but with the way he thrashed and shouted, knocking down a centrepiece of fresh peonies and a full glass of wine onto the pristine white linen, you'd think he was being hunted. Who gave you that video? He shouted. That's illegal. That's invasion of privacy. His words bounced off the walls like wild tennis balls. People were standing now, families at other tables gripping their kids' arms, waiters exchanging glances, and a young man at the bar had already pulled out his phone and was recording. Emily covered her face with both hands. Olivia was frozen, her lips parted in stunned horror. And me. I just sat there, arms folded, eyes steady. A blonde grandma in ivory with a spine made of iron. The manager raised his hand and said sternly, Sir, you're disturbing the other guests. I'm going to have to ask you to leave or I will call the police. Derek spun around, chest heaving. You don't understand. This is slander. She set me up. And that's when I finally stood, slowly, gracefully. My joints ached from the arthritis, but not even pain could shake the calm rising in my chest. Derek, I said, quiet but firm, everything on that screen was your own doing, your own words, your own face, your own lies. I simply organised it all. The manager looked at me, confused. Ma'am, should we call someone? I nodded gently. Yes. You should call the police. And while you're at it, please let them know there's someone here with several outstanding unpaid credit card accounts under fraudulent names. One of them belongs to a woman named Trish Flanders. Derek's eyes darted. You wouldn't... I already did, I said, 2 days ago. Just wanted to see how long you'd dance before the music stopped. And like divine timing, blue and red lights flashed outside the restaurant window. Emily gasped. Olivia finally blinked. Derek turned, and for the first time in all these years, he looked afraid. But to explain why this moment was so satisfying, I need to tell you what Derek had done to my daughter. Not the cheating. That was just the tip of the iceberg. No, it started 3 years ago when Olivia lost her job. She was a project manager at a small architecture firm, and when they downsized, she came home devastated. Derek barely blinked. You'll find something else, he muttered from behind his laptop. not looking up. But she didn't. Not for a while. And Derek used that silence as leverage. First, he took over their finances. He said it would ease her burden. Then he began controlling the groceries, the internet bill, the thermostat. He gave her weekly allowances. Yes, like a child. He made her feel small. And the worst part? He masked it as help. Olivia would come over to my cottage on Sunday evenings and sit at my kitchen table with a forced smile, hands trembling as she poured tea. I knew she was hiding something. Then one day she came over with a bruise on her wrist. She said she slipped. I didn't press, but I took a picture. And I took another the next month when she had one on her arm, and another when she wore sunglasses indoors and said her eyes were sensitive. I started digging. I followed his social media patterns. I noticed the days he claimed to be at late meetings and cross-referenced them with flight records. Then I met with a lawyer friend of mine. We built a file, a fat one. It contained bank records, hotel receipts, voice recordings, and even signed business contracts in Olivia's name, without her permission. He had used her name as a silent partner in 2 shady ventures that left her legally liable for thousands in tax debt. And she didn't even know. Until I showed her. I remember that night vividly. I made her sit down on the porch with me. The stars were out. I handed her the folder. At first she didn't want to open it, but when she did, her hands shook. She cried for nearly an hour. She kept saying, "How did I not see it? How did I let it get this far?" I held her hand. Because love makes us blind, but truth makes us brave. She didn't leave him that night, but she started watching, and I kept gathering. Back at the restaurant, the officers were already walking through the front door. Derek turned to Olivia. "Tell them this is a mistake. Tell them I'm your husband." Olivia stood, her face pale, lips trembling, but not from fear, from relief. "I don't know who you are anymore," she whispered, "but I know what you've done." And she stepped aside. Derek tried to push past the officers. "This is crazy! She's manipulating all of you!" The police calmly restrained him. One of them, an officer named Coleman, held up his phone and said, "Mr. Matthews, we've received reports from a confidential informant that link you to identity fraud and tax evasion. You'll need to come with us." Derek screamed, "I'm innocent! She's senile! She's crazy!" But no one listened. Because now everyone had seen the truth. As they cuffed him and led him out, the restaurant was completely silent, except for one small, uncertain clap, then another, and then full applause. The room erupted, not in cheers, but in respect. People nodded at me. Waiters gave me thumbs up. A woman even whispered, "I wish my mum had your courage." And me? I looked at Emily, who sat blinking at the chaos, and I said softly, "Happy graduation, sweetheart. Now you know the truth." She hugged me tighter than ever before. But even as I hugged her back, I knew this wasn't over. Because when I got home that night, there was a letter waiting for me. No return address, no name. Just a folded piece of paper that read, "You're next, Margaret. You should have stayed out of it." I read that letter 3 times. "You're next, Margaret. You should have stayed out of it." There was no envelope, just a folded sheet of thick, cream-coloured paper placed right on the welcome mat of my porch. No one rang the bell. No one knocked. The ink looked fresh. I looked around, heart pounding. The street lamp at the corner of my block flickered lazily. The night air was still. Too still. My neighbour's old retriever let out a slow bark from behind his fence, and somewhere down the road a car door slammed. But my eyes stayed on the letter. My hands trembled, not from fear, not exactly, but from something older, deeper, a feeling I hadn't had since James passed away. Vulnerability. But then I reminded myself, I've survived worse. I lost my parents at 14. I worked 3 jobs in my 30s to put food on the table. I buried the love of my life and still found a way to water the roses every morning. And now someone wanted to scare me with paper? I wasn't that easy to break. Still, I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my rocker, the letter folded tightly in my palm, my cat Ginger curled at my feet. By dawn, I had made 2 decisions. 1, I'd install security cameras around the house. 2, I wasn't going to tell Olivia, not yet. She needed peace. Emily needed peace. I'd stirred enough chaos for one night. But something told me this wasn't just about Derek anymore. 3 days passed. Derek's arrest had made the local papers. Not the front page, but enough to rattle some cages. The article read, "Tech consultant detained on fraud charges after shocking graduation dinner incident." They didn't mention me, of course. I was just an elderly family member. Fine by me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. My motion light flicked on at strange hours. My trash can was turned over twice, and I kept finding footprints in my backyard that didn't match mine. One night I stepped out to get the paper and found a dead bird on my porch. Neck broken clean, just lying there like a warning. Still, I said nothing. Not to Olivia, not to the police. But I called someone I hadn't spoken to in over 20 years. His name was Walter Boone, retired military, former detective, and once upon a time, he'd asked me to marry him. "Margaret Rose?" he answered, voice deep and crackling through the line. "Walter," I breathed, "I need your help." He drove down from Tennessee that same day in a dusty black truck with a dented front bumper. He still wore that same battered brown leather jacket I used to tease him about in 1982. And when he saw me standing on the porch, he smiled. "You look exactly the same." "You old liar," I said, grinning despite myself. "I look like a raisin with lipstick." He laughed. "Still got fire, huh?" I handed him the letter. "I'm being followed. I need to know who sent this." He didn't flinch. He took the letter, sniffed it. Yes, sniffed it, held it to the light and said, "Expensive paper, someone with class, or wants to appear that way." He looked around. "You got enemies, Margaret." "More than I thought," I said. "One's in jail, but I think he had help." Walter's jaw tensed. "I'll stay in the guest room. Let me run some checks. We'll start with security footage." I nodded, but later that night, as Walter set up a tiny monitor in the living room to connect to the new cameras, a memory hit me. One I had forgotten, a conversation I overheard last year. Emily had been on the phone whispering angrily in her bedroom when she thought I was asleep on the couch. She said something like, "If Grandpa knew what he left behind, he'd be ashamed. But Grandma doesn't even know about the storage unit." At the time, I thought it was teenage angst. But now, storage unit. What storage unit? I never rented one. James never mentioned one in the will. And no one ever brought it up again. So the next morning, I went to the county office. Walter drove me. "Looking for any properties or units that may be listed under my husband's name," I told the clerk. She tapped on her keyboard, then paused. "There's one," she said, squinting at the screen. "Unit 17B at East Willow Storage. Been active since 2003. Auto-pay from a joint account under James and someone named Lewis Carter." "Lewis Carter?" I whispered. Walter leaned in. "You know him?" I nodded slowly. "He was James's business partner. They ran a small repair shop together in the early 90s. He died in 2010. Walter looked grave. "Then who's been paying the bill?" We drove to East Willow Storage that afternoon. It sat behind a chain-link fence just outside the edge of town, rows of grey metal doors with rusting locks and cracked pavement. Unit 17B was tucked at the far corner. The lock opened easily with the key the clerk gave us, and what we found inside made my knees buckle. There were boxes, dozens of them, labelled with my husband's handwriting. Receipts, contracts, photos, tapes. And on the top shelf, wrapped in plastic, a second will. Dated 4 months before James died. It wasn't the one filed with the lawyer. It wasn't the one Olivia and I had used to divide the estate. This one named a secret trust. one I had never seen, and the executor. Emily Lancaster, my granddaughter. Walter opened one of the boxes. It was filled with documents, bank slips, loan applications, letters, all signed by James and co-signed by Derek. Walter held up a page. He was laundering money through James's old repair business for years. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. Derek didn't just use Olivia. He had been draining our family since before James died, and he'd kept it quiet by blackmailing Lewis, James's old partner, who died under mysterious health complications just after the trust was created. I staggered backward. My hands shook. "This is bigger than I thought," I whispered. Walter nodded grimly. "We're dealing with more than fraud. This might involve forgery, maybe even foul play." I sat down on an overturned crate, and just then, Walter's phone buzzed. He picked it up, eyes narrowing. "You're going to want to hear this." He pressed the speaker. A deep voice said, "You were warned, Walter, but you brought her in anyway. Tell Margaret Rose, next time it won't be a bird." The line went dead. I stared at Walter, eyes wide. He looked at me, calm but fierce. "We just hit the hornet's nest." Outside, the wind picked up, and for the first time in my life, I knew my family had been living under a lie that might cost us everything. We drove back to my cottage in silence. Walter didn't speak. I didn't either. The storage unit, the hidden trust, the phone call threatening us directly, it was all too much to process. When we reached my driveway, the porch light was flickering again. Walter noticed it first. "I replaced that bulb 2 days ago," he muttered. We exchanged glances. He parked the truck, cut the engine, and scanned the street before helping me out. His hand stayed close to the inside of his jacket, where I suspected he was carrying the same sidearm he once used in the force. Quietly. My bones were tired, but my instincts were sharper than ever. Something was off. We stepped inside. Ginger, my cat, didn't greet us. She always came running the moment I opened the door. "Ginger," I called softly. "Ginger, baby." No answer. My heart skipped. Then I saw it. My living room window was open, wide, and on the floor beneath it was a single muddy boot print. Walter stiffened. "Stay here." He cleared the house in less than 5 minutes. When he returned, his jaw was clenched tight. "No one's inside now," he said. "But someone was." I walked to the kitchen. Every cabinet door was open. My drawers pulled out. The only thing missing? The blue notebook, the one I kept my records in, the one that documented every date, every lie, every bruise, every dollar missing since Olivia married Derek. Gone. "They knew exactly what to take," I whispered. Walter nodded. This wasn't about stealing jewellery. This was a message. And then I saw something else. A photograph pinned to the refrigerator with one of my magnets. It was a picture of me, taken from behind in my rose garden. I felt sick. "They've been watching me." Walter didn't argue. He just picked up the photo, slipped it into an envelope and said, "We're reporting this, and we're not waiting anymore." By the next morning, Walter had already contacted his old friend, a federal investigator named Agent McKay. She agreed to meet us at a small diner on the edge of town. She wore a grey suit, no makeup, short hair, and a look that said she didn't tolerate nonsense. "I'm going to be honest with you, Mrs. Lancaster," she said, setting her coffee down. "This goes deeper than a family dispute. Derek Matthews is on our radar, and not just for tax evasion. He's linked to a larger shell corporation ring based out of Atlanta." I stared at her. "You mean organised crime?" She nodded. "White collar, but connected to some very dangerous people, the kind who leave dead birds and break into homes." Walter leaned in. "They took her personal files. She's not safe." Agent McKay was calm but firm. "You'll need to stay somewhere else for a while, somewhere they won't expect. We'll assign surveillance, but until we get what we need, we can't offer full protection. I'm not running, I said. Both of them looked at me. I'm 84 years old. I have lived through war, grief, and childbirth. I'm not leaving my home because some coward wants to rattle me. If they want to come, let them come. But I won't hide. Walter gave a low chuckle. Told you. Still got fire. Agent McKay smiled faintly. All right. But if you're staying put, then we're installing 24-hour surveillance, cameras, motion sensors, and Walter, you stay here with her. He nodded once. Wouldn't leave her if you paid me. And then she handed me something. A flash drive. What's this? I asked. We recovered partial data from Derek's laptop, she said. You need to see what he's really been up to. We got home, plugged it into my old desktop. The screen came alive. There were hundreds of files. Most were finance records, but one folder was named Videos Do Not Share. Walter opened it, and what we saw next changed everything. Clips, secret clips, of my granddaughter Emily, taken inside her bedroom. My throat tightened. I couldn't breathe. Each file was labelled by date. Some went back 2 years. I stood up from my chair, trembling, my hands clenched. This monster. Walter said nothing, but I could see his face darken. His fingers gripped the mouse so hard his knuckles turned white. There were also clips of Olivia, changing clothes, brushing her hair, crying on the phone. He had cameras installed in his own home. He had been spying on them, watching his wife, watching his daughter. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I walked straight to the bathroom and vomited. That night I sat on my porch, wrapped in a wool blanket, staring out into the dark. I thought about all the years I spent trying to be the silent one, the calm one, the one who smiled politely through dinner even when someone insulted me. And look where that got me. My daughter abused, my granddaughter violated, my home watched. I had been a rose too long. Now it was time to show my thorns. I stood up and walked back inside, straight to the guest room where Walter was polishing an old revolver. We need to go public, I said. Everything, the documents, the footage, the second will, all of it. He paused. That'll put a target on your back. It's already there. He studied me for a second, then nodded. Okay, then we'll do it right. And just as he said that, a new email popped up on my screen. From an unknown sender. No text, just an attachment. A picture of Emily taken that morning walking home from school with a single caption, "Tell Grandma to stop or the girl is next." I stared at that photo of Emily for a full minute before I moved. She was wearing her lavender hoodie, the one I'd bought her for Christmas. Her head was bent toward her phone. She was walking home from school like any other day. But the photo wasn't taken from a distance. It was close. Too close. The angle. The shadow in the corner. Whoever took it had been standing across the street, watching her, following her. My chest clenched, not from fear, but from something deeper. Rage. That kind of fire that only a grandmother knows when someone dares to threaten what she loves most in the world. Walter rushed over when he saw my face. What happened? I turned the screen toward him. They're watching Emily. His jaw tensed like steel. We need to move fast. But I was already ahead of him. We're not waiting anymore. No more hiding, no more quiet plans. If they want war, they've got one. By midnight, we had sent the files to every major news station in the state. The financial records, the hidden camera footage, the second will, the recordings, all watermarked with timestamps, tied together with a statement I had written myself. My name is Margaret Rose Lancaster. I'm 84 years old, and I've spent the last 4 years watching my family be destroyed from the inside out. This is not just about fraud. This is abuse. This is control. And now this is justice. Walter pressed send. And the digital avalanche began. Morning came fast. By 9 a.m, the local news was airing the story. By noon, 2 national stations had picked it up. By evening, Tool to Grandma Justice was trending on social media. I didn't care about the noise. I didn't even care that my face was all over TV. I cared that Emily was safe, that Olivia was safe, that maybe, just maybe, some other woman out there might see the footage and recognize something in her own life and finally say, enough. But of course, the storm was only beginning. That evening, Olivia called me, breathless. Mum, my office just told me I've been served. Served with what? Derek filed an emergency injunction, says I'm leaking confidential business documents and slandering his name. Walter, who was sitting nearby listening, grabbed the phone. Don't worry, he said calmly. It's a scare tactic. He's trying to make noise. It won't hold up in court, not with what we have. I could hear Olivia's voice trembling. I can't do this anymore. I thought I was strong, but I'm breaking. My voice softened. Baby girl, you are not breaking. You are bending under weight that was never yours to carry. But I'm here. I've always been here, and now we fight, together, she cried. I let her. Sometimes tears are the armor you shed before you put on new strength. 3 hours later, someone broke my mailbox, shattered it into pieces, scattered letters all over the sidewalk. My power went out 10 minutes after that. Walter ran to the breaker box and came back shaking his head. Cut at the line, clean, professional. I sat in the dark with a flashlight in one hand and Ginger curled tightly under my feet. The fear was rising again, but I wouldn't give in to it. Margaret, Walter said, we need to leave for a few days. I'll take you to my cabin, off-grid. You'll be safer there. But I shook my head. No. Why? Because I haven't told you everything yet. He looked confused. What do you mean? I got up, went to the bookshelf behind the fireplace, and pulled down an old red leather-bound journal. It had belonged to James. Inside, taped to the back cover, was a key. To what? Walter asked. To the safe in the church, I whispered. Walter blinked. The church? Our old chapel, the one James and I helped build. He kept a box there, tucked behind the altar. I never opened it. He said, only if something ever happens to me, or if the lies become too loud. Walter stood slowly. Let's go. We drove through the back roads under cover of darkness. No headlights, no sound, just the tires crunching gravel and my pulse roaring in my ears. The church sat on a hill, abandoned for years, paint peeling, doors warped, but it still stood tall, a crooked cross still hanging over its entrance like a stubborn old soldier. Inside, the air was musty, cold and thick with memories. Walter found the false panel in the back of the altar. I used the key. The safe opened with a groan. Inside was a metal lockbox. I opened it and gasped. Inside were folders, dozens of them, each marked with dates and names I didn't recognize, financial statements, checks, photos, a list titled People He Paid Off. It wasn't just Derek, it was a network, real estate scams, government contracts, doctors, attorneys, judges, and right there on the third page, a signed check for $40,000 made out to Judge R. Henley. I stared at Walter. That's the judge overseeing Olivia's divorce hearing. Walter nodded grimly. He's compromised. It all made sense now. Derek had built his empire not on tech, but on manipulation, through bribery, through blackmail, through quiet threats and loud charm. He didn't fall into crime. He built a home in it. And now I had the blueprint. We drove back in silence, every light on in my house. Agent McKay met us there. She took one look at the files and didn't speak for a full 5 minutes. Finally, she looked up. This is enough to take down everyone in that chain, but it's also going to put a target on your back bigger than ever. I know, I said. Once we move on this, there's no turning back. I don't want to turn back, I replied. I want to finish this. She nodded once. We'll coordinate arrests, but you'll need to testify, and so will Olivia. Walter stepped forward. I'll stay on her porch until then. They won't get past me. McKay turned to me. Do you know what you're starting, Margaret? I smiled faintly. A fire they never saw coming. Later that night, as I sipped my tea and looked out the window, Emily texted me a heart emoji. Just that. I replied, "Love you more, be brave, you come from fire." Then I walked to the porch, looked up at the stars and whispered to myself, "James, I found it. The truth. I wish you were here to see this." But then, from the shadows across the street, a camera clicked, a flash, then silence. Walter was already out the door with his gun drawn, but whoever it was gone. And in their place on my doorstep was a single black envelope. Inside, a video file, unnamed, no label. Walter loaded it onto his laptop. The screen lit up, and there, sitting at a desk in a dark room, was someone I never expected to see again. He looked straight at the camera, smiling, and said, "Hello, Margaret. I told you the game wasn't over." It was James's old business partner, Lewis Carter, the one we thought was dead. "Lewis Carter is dead," I whispered. My voice was dry, hollow. Walter sat beside me, staring at the frozen frame on the laptop. Lewis Carter's face, older now, but unmistakable. That same cleft in his chin. The same way he always leaned slightly to the left when he sat, like his spine couldn't quite support the weight of his secrets. But here he was, alive, and speaking. Walter clicked play again. The video began. "Hello, Margaret. I suppose you never thought you'd see this old face again. But then again, you always underestimated me. Or maybe you just trusted James too much. He kept a lot from you, you know." I leaned closer, blood roaring in my ears. "You've poked too hard, old girl. Dug too deep. Derek was just a pawn, a stupid one, sure. But the real game? You don't even know who's playing yet." He leaned forward. "You should have stayed in your garden. Should have baked your pies. But now? You want to burn it all down? Fine. Let's see who burns first." Then the screen went black. I sat back, dizzy. The room felt smaller, tighter. My breath came in short gasps, and Ginger meowed quietly at my feet, sensing the storm in the room. "I buried him," I muttered. "I went to the funeral." Walter's voice was low, steady. "Closed casket, wasn't it?" I nodded slowly. "They said he died of pancreatic cancer. Olivia and I sent flowers. I cried in the pew. I remember the smell of lilies." Walter rubbed his jaw. "Fake death. Wouldn't be the first, especially if he needed to disappear before everything fell apart." I looked up at him. "James never mentioned—" "He wouldn't," Walter said gently. "If he was protecting you." And that's when it hit me. The storage unit, the sealed box, the files, the warning to only open it if the lies became too loud. James knew. He knew Lewis wasn't dead. He knew something would come for us eventually. And now that time had come. Agent McKay came over within the hour. She watched the video twice, then called someone at the bureau. "This changes everything," she said. "If Lewis Carter faked his death and was part of the laundering operation, then this is a federal-level conspiracy. We're talking racketeering, tax fraud, identity manipulation, even organized extortion." She paused. "This goes beyond Derek." Walter narrowed his eyes. "What happens now?" "We find him," McKay replied, "and we do it fast." She turned to me. "Margaret, if he's threatening your granddaughter, we need to consider protective custody." I shook my head. "No. If I disappear, he wins, and Emily lives in fear." "I can't guarantee your safety," McKay warned. "I'm not asking for safety," I replied. "I'm asking for justice." The next morning, Olivia showed up at my doorstep, face pale, lips trembling. "He's out," she whispered. "Who?" "Derek. Bail was posted, quietly, no press coverage. He walked out of county holding this morning." Walter cursed under his breath. McKay wasn't surprised. Someone powerful is pulling the strings, likely Lewis, possibly more. Olivia's hands shook. "What do we do now?" I pulled her into a hug. "We stay loud. We stay together. but I could feel her fear, like static between us. And then Emily came running from the car. "Grandma," she said, breathless, "look what was taped to the school gate." She handed me a note. "I warned you. One more step, and we take her. Elsie." I froze. The words were sharp, final. And under them, a photo of Emily's classroom from outside the window. Walter called for backup immediately. McKay dispatched an agent to the school. But in my gut, I knew this wasn't just a threat, it was a countdown. That night, I barely slept. I sat in the living room holding James's old Bible in my hands. Not reading it, just holding it. Feeling the weight of years, of promises, of secrets. And then something strange happened. I remembered a line James once said the night before he died. We were drinking tea on the back porch. "If anything ever happens, Margaret, look under the blue rose." At the time, I thought it was metaphorical. A poetic goodbye from a dying man. But what if it wasn't? I walked out to the garden in my nightgown. The moon was full. The roses were quiet, sleeping like everything else. The blue rose bush stood in the corner, blooming slightly late this season. I knelt, slowly, and dug beneath it. 6 inches down, my fingers hit metal. A small tin box. I opened it. Inside was a cassette tape, labelled, "For Margaret, play when it's time." Walter drove me into town the next morning to find an old tape deck. We finally located one at a thrift store owned by a woman named Beth, who called me Honey and told me her grandma used to keep secrets in her freezer. Back at home, I clicked play. James's voice filled the room, warm, tired, but clear. "Margaret, if you're hearing this, it means you've found the truth, or at least enough of it to be in danger." I felt tears welling up. Lewis Carter didn't die. He faked it, and I helped him. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. He was going to ruin us. Said he had proof of something that would destroy our family. So I signed papers, let him move funds through our old business. But I started recording everything, building a file. I couldn't live with the guilt. When I realised he was dragging Derek into it too, I tried to pull out. That's when the threats started. Against you, against Olivia, even Emily, and she was just a toddler. I wrote a second will, built a trust, hid everything. I prayed you'd never need to see this, but if you are, then promise me. His voice cracked. "Promise me you'll finish it. Burn the whole rotten thing down. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but I loved you too much to pull you into this mess." The tape ended, and I sat there sobbing. Not because I was broken, but because I was finally whole. I wiped my face and stood. Walter watched me quietly. "I know what to do," I said. "We're taking it all public." Walter nodded. "No," I replied. "We're not just going public." I turned toward him. "We're inviting them." He blinked. "What?" "To dinner," I said. "A graduation redo. Just like the one before. Same restaurant, same table. But this time, I set the stage, and they'll walk into the trap." Walter smiled slowly. "You sly fox." "Let them come," I whispered. "Let Lewis come. Let Derek show up with his polished shoes and his fake grin." I narrowed my eyes. "And when they do, I'll show them what a grandmother's revenge really looks like." It was a Tuesday when I sent out the invitations. Formal, elegant, white cardstock with silver borders. Scripted text that read, "You are cordially invited to a celebration of strength, survival, and truth." Same venue, same room at Olive Pine. Same table we sat at during Emily's graduation dinner. Same chandeliers. Same piano in the corner. Except this time, it wouldn't be a night of tears. It would be reckoning. Walter thought I was crazy at first. "You're inviting a man who faked his own death, who threatened your granddaughter to dinner." "Yes," I said, calmly adjusting my pearls. "And I'm letting him think I've given up. that I'm ready to negotiate. You think he'll come? I looked up. People like Lewis. They can't resist power, or the illusion of it, and when he sees me dressed up, surrounded by smiling faces, he'll think he's won, that I'm begging for a truce. Walter smirked. And what will you be doing? I smiled back. Holding the detonator. Olivia hesitated at first. You're sure about this? She asked, smoothing out her navy blue blazer as we stood in front of the restaurant. I've never been more sure, I said. We show up, we smile, and we let the truth speak for itself. Emily was there too. Her eyes were wide, nervous, but she clutched my hand like a lifeline. What if they hurt you, Grandma? I leaned down. Then I'll hurt them louder. She laughed. That was the first time I'd heard her laugh in days. By 7 p.m, the table was full. My guests? Olivia and Emily. Walter, seated beside me like my personal guard dog in a tailored grey suit. 2 agents from the bureau disguised as a married couple. And the pièce de résistance. Derek. Wearing a new watch, new grin. Same rotten soul. He strutted in at 7:12, nodded at the hostess, and walked toward us like nothing had happened. I must admit, he said, sliding into his seat across from me. I didn't think you'd have the guts to reach out again, Margaret, but I'm glad you did. We're family, after all. I didn't blink. Are we? He gave that lopsided smile. Now listen, I know things got messy, but there's a way out of this. I've spoken to people, important people. If we make a statement retracting the video, this can all go away. And Lewis? I asked. His smile faltered. He'll be here, Derek said, but you'll need to show good faith. No recordings, no surprises, just talk. I nodded politely. Across the room, the pianist played something soft and haunting. Then, at exactly 7:20 p.m, Lewis Carter walked in. Alive. Taller than I remembered. Grey hair slicked back. Expensive suit that didn't match the dead man we buried over a decade ago. He walked straight to the table, took a slow breath, and looked at me like I was a child interrupting grown-ups. Well, he said, aren't you full of surprises? I stood. Everyone at the table went quiet, even the agents. Lewis, I said, voice calm, I see faking your death didn't kill your appetite. He chuckled. Still sharp, Margaret, but let's not do this here. We came to discuss peace. I leaned closer. You came to witness your own burial. He blinked, and that's when the waiter arrived, polished, silent. He set down a silver tray in front of Lewis with a remote control sitting on top. Lewis frowned. What is this? I lifted the remote. It's connected to the restaurant's sound system, and all 10 televisions around this room. His eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. I pressed the red button. Suddenly the music stopped. The piano halted mid-note, and all 10 TVs around the dining hall lit up, playing different videos. Footage of Lewis signing forged documents, bank statements, signed under his false identity. Audio clips, him threatening me, talking about laundering money, describing Emily's school in detail. A collective gasp swept through the room. Patrons turned in their seats. Phones came out. Derek jumped up furious. Turn that off! The bureau agents stood calmly and flashed their badges. Please remain seated, the woman said. We are conducting a federal investigation. Lewis's face twisted. You senile old hag. You came here thinking I'd beg for mercy, I interrupted. But I came here to bury you. Publicly, permanently, and legally. I turned to the cameras, now capturing every angle. This man faked his death, laundered millions, and terrorized my family, and I will not stay silent. People clapped. Some stood. One woman wiped a tear from her eye. Derek looked ready to bolt, but the male agent stepped forward and cuffed him. You are under arrest for obstruction of justice, fraud, conspiracy, and intimidation of a minor. Lewis tried to run. Walter stepped forward and punched him square in the jaw. He hit the floor like a sack of bricks. Agent McKay walked in from the kitchen, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. She smiled at me. "You really like dramatic dinners, don't you, Margaret?" I shrugged. "I find them cleansing." Within the hour, Lewis and Derek were both in custody. The news picked it up live. By morning, their entire network was unravelling. 23 arrests, 5 judges disbarred, over 12 million in illegal assets frozen. And me. I went home, watered my roses, sat on my porch with Ginger in my lap, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel watched. But that night, as the moon rose over the hills of Asheville, a new envelope arrived on my doorstep. No threats this time, no photos, just a single note. "You think you've won, but this game started long before you, Margaret. The Hollow Hand." Walter read it twice. "Do you know what that means?" he asked. I stared at the note, heart pounding. I did know. I'd heard the phrase once in James's war journals. The Hollow Hand was a code name, I said slowly. A shell organisation, black market contracts, mercenaries, political puppets. James wrote about it, but he said it was dismantled in the 70s. Walter looked grim. Apparently not. I turned back to the garden. The roses swayed in the wind like they knew something I didn't. Justice had been served, but a darker force was waking up, and I had no idea how deep this would go. The next morning I woke up with a strange heaviness in my chest. Not fear exactly, but something close to it, like standing at the edge of a cliff knowing the worst storm hasn't hit yet. The note signed by the Hollow Hand lay on my nightstand beside James's Bible, and a small photograph of Emily taken when she was 7, missing her 2 front teeth and wearing her pink cowgirl boots. Walter was already up. I heard him in the kitchen, making coffee the same way James used to, strong enough to wake the devil. He walked into my room with 2 mugs and a frown. "I called McKay," he said. "She knows what the Hollow Hand is. The Bureau's heard whispers about them for years. Cold trails, sealed files, everything classified." I took the mug from him. "You think Lewis was part of them?" He nodded. "Or a puppet?" I sipped the coffee slowly. "Then the hand that's really pulling the strings still hasn't shown its face." By noon, Olivia received another subpoena, this time not from the court, but from a private legal firm in D.C. The papers accused her of willful defamation against deceased government contractors, claiming the video evidence may have violated federal protections. It was a scare tactic, cloaked in formality, but it meant they were regrouping, and they wanted us to know it. McKay arrived at our cottage later that afternoon, more serious than I'd ever seen her. She sat at my kitchen table and said, "We've traced the last known transaction made by Lewis before his capture. He wired $30,000 to a shell company in Belize. That company is linked to 4 other shell firms, 3 of which have contracts with private correctional facilities in the US, and 1 with a media conglomerate." Walter rubbed his forehead. "So, this Hollow Hand isn't just laundering money." McKay looked me dead in the eyes. "They're shaping narratives, buying judges, jailing whistleblowers, making people vanish." I swallowed hard. "And now I've painted a target on my back," I said. "No," McKay said. "You've lit a torch. Now we follow the fire." The next few days moved quickly. News stations continued their coverage. More arrests followed. But so did the threats. Emily's school reported a strange man loitering near the gymnasium. A drone hovered outside Olivia's office window for 5 minutes before flying off. And someone left a dead fox in my backyard, its paws severed, mouth stuffed with shredded newspaper. Walter insisted we move. I refused. I didn't want to spend my last years hiding. If they were going to come for me, they'd do it on my land. But I didn't tell anyone what I found the night before under the floorboards in the old storage room. A rusted box. Inside, a letter from James, written in 1986. "If they ever return, You'll need this. Don't trust anyone wearing a red pin, not even law. There are double agents, people we thought were friends, and if the hollow hand still exists, burn it to the ground. J. Inside the envelope was also a second flash drive, marked, for the public only. I stared at it for hours, unsure, and then I plugged it in. The contents were unbelievable. A video of a government official shaking hands with Lewis Carter, receipts showing funneling of taxpayer money into off-book projects, correspondence between judges and private prisons negotiating longer sentencing for profit, photos of children in educational camps that weren't schools at all. It was everything James feared, and more. And now, it was mine. Walter walked into the room, took one look at the screen and said, "You know what this means?" I nodded. "They'll kill to stop this. But if we leak it," he said, "they won't kill. They'll obliterate." I stared at the flash drive and made a decision. We hosted a press conference on my porch. Yes, my porch. McKay advised against it. So did Walter. But I needed the world to know that justice doesn't always live in courtrooms or federal buildings. Sometimes it grows in a rose garden, in an 84-year-old widow's soul. I stood in front of a wall of cameras, dressed in a soft pink sweater, my silver hair pinned back. Emily stood beside me, holding my hand, and I said, "My name is Margaret Rose Lancaster. I am 84 years old, and I will not die with the truth in my throat." I uploaded the flash drive contents live on the spot. Dozens of media outlets aired it in real time. People gasped. Some reporters cried. The internet exploded. And within 24 hours, everything changed. They came for me at midnight. 3 black SUVs, no plates, no headlights. Walter saw them first through the front camera feed. "They're here," he said quietly, loading his revolver. I got up from my rocker, tied my robe tighter, and kissed Ginger on the head. We turned off every light and waited. But the moment they reached the porch, McKay's team swarmed in. Floodlights, helicopters, shouting, barking dogs. They weren't federal agents at all. They were mercenaries, sent by the hollow hand to erase me before I could testify before Congress. But the Bureau had anticipated it. McKay herself tackled one of them as they tried to set fire to my back door. Walter chased another into the woods. The third, he entered through my pantry door. He saw me, raised his gun, but I looked him dead in the eye and whispered, "You picked the wrong grandmother." And then Olivia appeared behind him with a fireplace poker. She knocked him cold. For the first time, my daughter stood taller than I'd ever seen her. "I'm done hiding," she said. The arrests made national news, not just of the attackers, but of the people they worked for. Within days, 2 senators resigned, 3 CEOs were indicted, 5 judges were suspended, and the hollow hand, publicly exposed. Their secret network, shattered. Their contracts, frozen. Their threats, powerless. The truth had finally won, and I was still alive to see it. Let the roses bloom. It's been 6 months now. The cottage is quiet again. Emily visits every weekend. Olivia has returned to school, finishing her psychology degree. She wants to help other women who lived in silence like she did. Walter stays most days. He tends the garden now, mostly. Says roses teach him patience. The town mayor stopped by last week. They're renaming the public library after me. "The Margaret Rose Justice Wing," I cried, not because I needed recognition, but because the truth was finally louder than the lies. I never thought I'd be the one to shake a nation. I never thought my quiet life would become a beacon for others. But it has. I sit on my porch now. Same rocking chair, same view. And sometimes, strangers stop by just to thank me. Not for taking down criminals, but for not staying silent. James would have been proud. He always said, "Roses don't scream, they bloom, and the world notices." And that's what I did. I bloomed, even when the world tried to bury me. Even when they called me weak. even when they came for my family. I stood my ground, because I am Margaret Rose Lancaster, and I refused to die before planting every seed of truth I had.